Hello everyone. A very good morning, good afternoon, or good evening based on the time zone that you are in, and welcome to Apex Hours. My name is Meera Nair, and today's topic is exception handling in flows using fault connectors and platform events. A big thank you to Amit Chowdhury for inviting me to Apex Hours again. This is my second session with Apex Hours. This is really a great platform for all of us to learn everything about Salesforce. A little about myself. I'm currently working as a Salesforce architect in UST Global Trivandrum, India. I have total of 13 years of IT experience, 11 of which has been on the Salesforce platform. This is our agenda for today. Let us see some flow use cases and exception handling in these flows using fault connectors and platform events. In each release, Salesforce is adding lots of new features to flows. I have mentioned some of this here, but there are many more. Flows can be used to do some operations during a record save operation. Before update and after update flows are latest addition to this, which help us to use flows without the help of a process builder. Flows can be used to integrate Salesforce with external systems also. In addition to this, flows can be used to perform some user interface specific actions. But before deciding flow as your solution, it is better to consider performance aspects also, since flow might not be suitable for very complex operations. But because of its popularity and ease of implementation, the count of flows are getting increased day by day in every org. So it is becoming equally important to handle exceptions happening from flows. What is an exception? It's an unexpected event occurred during your transaction execution. It can happen because of multiple reasons. It can be a DML failure, SOQL exception, or a null pointer exception, or it can be anything. But why you need to handle this? If you are not handling exception, your entire transaction is going to fail and users are going to see system error messages on the screen. That is definitely not a good user experience, right? And why you need to log exceptions? When you handle exceptions, actually your transaction will be success and users won't recognize that something went wrong at the backend. Later, when they review their records, they will see that some of their expected values are not populated. So when they are raising a support ticket to identify what went wrong, unless there is a log on this exception details, support team might not be able to debug this issue. So let us see some flow use cases and also see how we can handle exceptions and log exceptions in this particular flow. This is our first scenario, which is an after update use case. The scenario is something like this. I would like to concatenate and populate child contact country value to parent account. For example, if we have got two contacts under an account, contact 1 and contact 2 with country values as India and United States, once the second contact is saved, I would like to see the country value in account as India, US, as you are seeing in this particular screenshot. So let us see what is the expected behavior. This is my account. Let us go to contact and create a new contact. Enter only the required fields. Also populate country as India. Now let us save this record. Go back to account and verify if the account country has populated there. You can see account country has populated as India. So this is the expected behavior. Now we need to see how we can introduce an exception in this particular flow. Before that, this is the solution that I have implemented. It's a combination of process builder and flow. From the process builder, whenever a new contact is getting created, I am passing a couple of parameters to my flow, and The parameters are basically the contact IDs under a particular account. And inside the flow, we will iterate over all these contacts, get the country value and concatenate it to a temporary flow variable. At the end, when the looping is completed, I'm going to retrieve the account again and going to update account with the concatenated country value. This is how the flow is getting executed. Now, let us see how we can create an exception scenario. For this, what I have done, I have created a violation rule in account, which makes account number field mandatory for any account update operation. Let us go back to the org. I have validation rule created already, but it is not active. So let us edit this and make it active. Now let us go back and create a new contact and see what is the transaction behavior. This time I'm selecting country value as United States and let us save this. Okay. This time the transaction got failed with an error message saying account country population is mandatory on an account update. Now let us see how we can handle and log exception. For logging exception, I have created an exception object like you can see on the screen. It contains just a few fields only: exception details, object, which holds the exception happened on which object, the operation type, and the record ID for which the exception happened. Now let us see how to handle the exception using fault connector. So what is a fault connector? Fault connector identifies which element to execute when the previous element results in an error. From this picture, you can see that there is a red line which is getting connected to a create exception process from the update record action. So these fault connectors can be associated with only specific nodes. So to nodes like when you are doing a DML operation or a query operation, or if you have got an Apex callout, from all these nodes, you will be able to associate it to a fault connector. This is our flow, which is doing the account update with the country values actually. So here, let us see how we can add a fault connector. Basically, when you add the fault connector, it is going to log an exception record to the exception object. So the action that you need to perform is create record. So I'm adding a create record node here. And let us name it like log exception. And I'm going to use values from multiple resources. Now we need to select the object. Select it as exception, and we can now do the field mapping also. First I will select the object, and here the object type is account. For operation also you can enter some string value. So here I am going to populate it as account country population. Record ID, I have already a process to fetch account value actually. So I'm just selecting the account ID from that particular process. And last one is exception details. So exception details we will be able to retrieve from flow, which is a global variable. Click on flow. In flow you can see something called fault message. So select this one. Now we have mapped all the values which we need in the exception object. Since this is done, we have added the create record operation here. Next, what we need to do is add the fold connector. Normally, how we are adding a connector to another node in the flow, you just drag and dropping this, right? So this is a normal connector. Now let us see how to add a fold connector. When you add a second connector from a node to a second node, what you are getting is fold connector, and you can remove the first connector because we don't need this. You need to add the first connector only if you want to do some additional operations if the update record operation is success. In my scenario, I don't want to do any additional operation. That's why I removed the first connector and I kept only the second connector here, which is the fold connector. Now what this fold connector is going to do, if the update record operation is a failure, it is going to log an exception record to exception object. Since we have added the fold connector, let us save this flow as a new version and activate this. Let us go back, create a new contact record and see what is the transaction behavior now. Click on new contact, enter all mandatory fields. Populate country, save this. Since we have added the fold connector, what happened is the contact creation is success. But it should also create an exception record. Let us go to exception tab, refresh. Now we can see we don't have any record here. So let us refresh and see if we have got an exception object or exception record got created. Yes, we can see an entry here. Open and see. You can see whatever mapping we have given in the create record process, it is populated here, including the record ID and the flow exception. So this is how adding a fold connector, you can log exception details and the transaction can be success in this case. Let us see the transaction behavior. Like you have seen, the contact creation is success, exception record got created, and account country is not populated. Yeah, that is an important step that I forgot to show you. Let us go back to the account and check if we have United States appended there. No, it is not. That is because the update actually got failed. So that particular flow process didn't happen and country is not updated. So the behavior is similar to adding a try catch in Apex block. When you add a try catch, that particular, if there is some exception happening within the try catch block, that single piece is getting failed, but from the next outside the try catch block, the execution continues. Similar behavior here also. But if something goes wrong, if you want to fail the complete transaction, what we can do? This can be our requirement in some cases, right? If something is getting failed, you don't want the entire transaction to be success. Instead, you would like to roll back all the changes. But you want to still log error. How we can do that? There is no standard approach available in Flow for this. So what I have done, I have used the standard throw exception approach available in Apex class. For that, I have introduced an Apex class called exception util. This has an invocable method called invoke exception util. It's accepting the flow error message as a parameter and it is just throwing the exception. That's the only thing happening within this particular exception util class. Now, within the flow, what we need to do is we need to call this Apex method for throwing the exception. Let us do that. This is our flow. And what we need to do is add an action for calling the Apex method. I have the Apex method created already. maybe, yeah. This is the exception util class that I was just mentioning. So let us add that, invoke exception util. And you can input values also. We have exception message as a parameter, include that. And what we need to pass here is the exception message from the flow. So select flow here and select the fault message. This is done. Connect this to throw exception. Save as a new version. Activate it. Let us go back and create a new record, new contact record, and see the behavior. So our expectation is that contact creation is going to fail and it is going to create an exception record. Let us see if that is going to happen. Choose the country value as China. Save this. Okay, like expected, the contact creation got failed. But what happened to exception details? Let us go back and see if we have a new exception got logged. Okay, this is the previous exception. That means we don't have a new exception record got created. But why? This is because the transaction got failed and whatever operation happened within that transaction that got rolled back. So what was the transaction behavior? Complete transaction got failed and no exception logging happened. How to solve this? Because I want to fail my transaction, but I want to create that exception record also. That is where platform events are going to help us. So I have created a platform event in my org called exception log, which almost has the same fields as my exception object, like exception details, object, operation, and record ID. And the important thing that you need to take care is that the publish behavior for our platform event should be published immediately. So platform events has got two kinds of publish behavior, publish after commit and publish immediately. What do you mean by publish after commit? So if you have a record action happening and as part of that operation, if you have a publish platform event operation, that going to actually happen only if the transaction completed successfully. That means in case the transaction got failed, the publish PE action will not be happening. So what publish immediately action means? It means if you have a publish platform event action as part of your current operation, irrespective of the transaction is success or failed, the event is going to get published successfully. So it will not wait for the complete transaction completion. This is the behavior that we are looking for. That is, even if the contact creation got failed, we still want to log the exception. So once you capture the details to a platform event, right, I would like to log those details back to our exception record. For this, I want to process the platform event. Platform events can be processed in Salesforce in multiple ways, either through a PB or through a flow or through a trigger. I have used trigger operation here because I felt like trigger is more flexible compared to process builder and flow. Because when I tried to consume the platform even using the process builder, it was asking for some additional details like you have to associate that particular platform event subscribe operation using a particular record and all, which I felt like more complex compared to a normal trigger. So that's why I have opted a trigger, and this is the trigger which is iterating over the platform event and creating the exception record. So you might be thinking like, If we have got a platform event which has got almost the same fields as an exception object, why you still need the exception object there? You can still, or you can just utilize platform event instead of that. But the reason is here. The platform event does not support many of the operations that we are looking for, like reporting, executing queries. If you want to create formula fields on this particular exception record for some additional operations, that's also not supported. That's why we are going with a two-step process. That is, when an exception is happening within the transaction, we are going to publish a platform event, and the trigger inside the platform event is going to create the actual exception record. Let us go back and see how we can publish a platform event from this particular flow. So you have this create record option available here already, right? Which is currently creating the exception record. Okay. Before showing how I can publish a platform event, maybe quickly I will show you the platform event also. How you can create a new platform event. So new platform event is almost similar to a new object creation. You can click on new platform event. You need to enter all the labels here. And once the platform event is created, this is almost like an object only, you will have an option to create fields under that particular platform event. So this is the platform event that I have created for our exception logging called exception log. You can see it's almost looks like an object only. If a standard object is getting appended with underscore underscore C, a platform event is getting appended with underscore underscore E. And also there are some restrictions on the type of fields that you can create inside a platform event. So you can see the custom fields that I have created. Since the platform event is ready, let us go back to the flow and publish the platform event instead of the exception record creation. So publishing platform event from a flow is same as create record operation. Since we have create record operation already available here, let us modify that and create a platform event instead of that particular object. Exception log, choose the object as exception log, which is platform event. Now we need to redo the field mapping because the type of object got changed. Similar to what we have done before, object, let us choose it as account. Operation as account country population. Record ID as current account ID, which is already available as part of get account process. And the last field is exception message, which can be retrieved from flow port message. So we have changed the exception logging using platform event. Save this as a new version and activate this flow. Let us go back and create a new record. So the expected behavior is that the transaction should fail, but still we should have the exception record getting created. Save this record. You can see the transaction got failed, but let us go back to exception and see if we have Okay, you can see that a new exception record got created now with all the details that we have seen in the previous case. I hope now it is clear, like if you want to log the exception but still want to fail the transaction, how we can achieve that. That is using a platform event. Let us see exception logging in a Screenflow element also. So I have got a scenario for Screenflow, which is something like if the account type is partner account, that is in account, I have got a pick list called account type, which contains two values, end user and partner account. So if the account type is partner account, then I would like to display a screen on account detail page where user is asked to enter some additional details, and based on the details that user has entered, it will be automatically deciding the partnership level of that particular account as diamond, gold or silver. This is the flow. Let us go to the org and see how the behavior is. Okay, so here now the account type is not populated, but this is still visible. So like we mentioned, first let us make this conditionally visible. I hope you know what to do to make this conditionally visible. Let us go and edit this page. This is the flow component that I have added, which passes basically a record ID to the flow. And here you can set the component visibility. And I'm adding a filter here, which basically says account type equals partner. So we have added the criteria and save this flow. Go back to the account. Okay, now you can see that the screen is not visible here because the condition has not met. Okay, so let us populate account type here as partner. Oh, but we have this validation rule on the account which does not allow us to save this account. So for now, what we can do, just deactivate that particular validation rule so that we can update the values correctly on account for now, and later we will enable it back. I have deactivated the validation rule and let us save this. Okay, deactivating the validation rule itself, let us do this operation now. You can see that section, that is the flow screen, is visible now. So like I said, based on a set of conditions, it's basically populating the partnership level. That's what you can see here. Like I said, partnership level is either diamond, gold or silver, but it should be populated automatically based on the condition from here. So you can see the screen with flow element is visible here now. And let us populate or let us select some basic values. First one is the employee count. Let me select the highest value so that the partnership level should be diamond. Click on next. Country count, meaning here you can see the number of countries in which the partners are present. Again, choose the highest one. Okay, the operation has completed. That's why it could reset. And you can see here that the partner level got updated as diamond. This is what the Screenflow is doing. Now, let us activate that validation rule again so that the transaction is going to fail. And if the transaction failed, let us see what is the type of operation happening here. You will be seeing an unhandled fault exception here. And similar to what we have done in the previous flow, we can add basically a create record option, which is going to log platform event. Select the object type as exception log and map all the field values. Our operation type is account partnership population. Record ID, we are basically passing the account record ID from the account page to the flow through this particular variable. So select that one. Now add the error message or exception details and select flow, and flow's fault message will be populated here. We are done. So like we have done before, add the second connector and remove the first one. So we have added the logic to create the platform event, which should be automatically logging details to exception. Here I'm not going to throw the exception because the operation is just the screen element, right? We are not doing anything else. So save this as a new version and activate this. Let us go back to the flow and redo the operation. Since the exception is handled, there is no error message shown on the screen. But let us go to the record, exception record, and see like if we have got a new. Currently we have got only 2 exception record. Take all. Yes, you can see this is the one which is corresponding to the account partnership population failure. All the records or all the field values are populated here. This is one way of handling the exception from a Screenflow. But Salesforce by default provides something called flow execution error event, which is a standard platform event provided by Salesforce. And whenever a Screenflow is failing, an entry with all the details will be populated to this particular flow execution error event. Let us try this one also. I tried using this, but I think this standard error is somewhat a recent addition to Salesforce, and some of the details are getting populated, but I was not able to populate all the required details. So we might need to still wait to use this flow execution error event. And like I said, this is only available in Screenflows. But if Salesforce can expand this to normal invocable processes also, this is going to be really helpful for us, and we don't need to actually create our own platform event because flow execution error event is going to handle everything for us. Let us see the behavior for now. From this flow, basically I am going to remove this particular create record option. So if you remove this, right, if some exception is going to happen, it's automatically going to log details to that particular flow event. And similar to what we have done for iterating over the platform event and creating exception record, I have created a similar trigger on flow execution error event also. But since this is the latest feature, I think this is still getting developed. I was not able to create a trigger on this particular flow execution error event from this developer console. Maybe I can quickly show you. File, new, Apex trigger. float. I'm just giving some name for now, and you can select the object type as flow execution or event. And once you submit this, right, I'm getting this kind of error like platform event or subject only support after insert. So what I have done, I have used Visual Studio to create this particular trigger and push to my org. That is how I created this one. You might be seeing an error like this. That's why I thought of informing this in advance. So I have got this code already in place. And let us redo this operation and see like if we are having a new exception record getting logged from this particular trigger. Okay, so latest count is 43. Let us go to the account, refresh the screen and execute this particular flow once again. Okay, you can see like the operation got failed, and what we need to now verify is that if exception record got created for this. Okay, yeah, you can see that operation now got updated, like from it's from flow trigger. That means it's working, but you can see that object record ID, those details are not getting populated even if I have done that mapping inside the trigger operation. So if you go to trigger, right, you can see from the flow execution error event object, there is a context object which is fetching the object type and also record ID, but unfortunately this is not getting populated. That's why I feel like this might not be still in a usable stage for us, so we might need to wait for some more time so that they might fix all these issues and we will be able to populate details from flow execution error event instead of firing platform events by our own. But this is going to save lots of time for us. These are some resources I referred for preparing for this session. And thank you so much, Amit, again for giving me this opportunity to share my knowledge. Thank you, everyone.